Now, in this edition of From Beginning to Endgame, we're going to be taking a look at the journey of the Mad Titan himself, Thanos, by digging both into the three movies we've seen him in, those being Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Infinity War, as well as some of the supplementary material that you may not know about, such as the canon MCU comic books that have offered us bits and pieces of his story. And first of all, we know that Thanos is from a race of godlike beings known as Titans, who lived on the planet Titan, and when their world was threatened by overpopulation, Thanos, who truly cared for his people and the planet, saw that the only way to save it, and them, was to eliminate half the population, choosing who lived and who died via a lottery that included the name of every man, woman, and child, no matter who they were or what status they held in their society, or how much wealth they may have amassed. The people considered this idea mad and too drastic, and so they ignored him at their own peril. And in time, the population was decimated to the point of near extinction, and their once beautiful homeworld was rendered an uninhabitable wasteland. And all of this Thanos watched, knowing he could have stopped it. He could have saved his world. And after this, as he traveled the cosmos, coming upon other worlds that had or soon would suffer the same fate as his beloved Titan, as he saw abundant, nearly infinite life trying to sustain itself on finite and ever-dwindling resources, it became clear to him that he was meant for a greater purpose. He was meant to be the one who could make the hard, nay, the impossible choices that others simply would or could not. He would be the one who would save the people of the universe from themselves. All things must be balanced, Thanos realized, even life and death, and so he moved from planet to planet, systematically and methodically wiping out half the population of each of them he came upon, in order to save them, in order to balance them and help them avoid the same fate as Titan. And though in his eyes he was the savior, a reluctant hero, soon word of his madness, of his strength and power, swept across the universe, and there were few who did not fear the coming of Thanos. But there were also those who would aid him, those who would side with him and become his armies of death and destruction, and his generals of war. Both the Chitauri and Outriders would serve him, and from each of the worlds he saved, Thanos would choose an orphan and raise them as his own. They would become his children, his elite generals, his Black Order, and among them were Corvus Glaive and his wife Proxima Midnight, Cull Obsidian, and finally Ebony Maw. And in them all, Thanos inspired fierce, unbreakable loyalty and an absolute belief in his cause. But then the Mad Titan came upon the world Zen-Huberi, and his attention was caught by a young child named Gamora, a child who feared neither him nor his armies, and fought against them despite no hope of victory. And in her he saw something. He saw one who could be turned into the deadliest assassin in the universe, and so he took her under his wing and trained her, and in time, his admiration for her became genuine love and affection. All the while, her hate for him grew. Nevertheless, as Gamora came to despise Thanos ever more, his love for her only grew, and he envisioned her one day sitting upon his throne when he was gone. But all that preferential treatment she garnered from Thanos only drew the ire of one of the other children of Thanos, who was not so loved or treated quite so well by the Mad Titan, a child by the name of Nebula, who was always pitted against Gamora and was always defeated by her time and time again. And for her failure, Nebula suffered greatly at the hands of Thanos himself, having pieces of her body removed and replaced with cybernetics in the hopes of one day making her strong. And so Nebula, daughter of Thanos, grew to hate both her father and sister, awaiting the day she could have vengeance upon both of them. But until that day would come, Nebula served loyally, even after Thanos realized his plan to balance the universe by moving from one planet to the next was a futile one, considering the scope and scale of the cosmos. Which is when his quest for the Infinity Stones began, his quest for the ultimate final solution, so he could bring a lasting balance, and finally find peace for himself. And though we don't know how Thanos came upon and acquired the Mind Stone, we do know that he hid it in a scepter that he could then use as a tool to manipulate and control the minds of others, and even the mind of one known as the God of Mischief. For when Thanos learned the Tesseract, which housed the Space Stone, was on Earth of all places, he used the scepter to help sway the mind of Loki to go to Earth and conquer it, promising him the world his brother Thor loved so dearly in exchange for retrieving the Tesseract from the insignificant humans. But even under the influence of the Mind Stone, which Thanos actually gives to Loki hidden within the scepter, To help keep control of him and for Loki to use as needed, Thanos wisely does not trust Loki, and so the other, a servant of Thanos, keeps a watchful eye on the god of mischief, warning him that if he fails, there is no place in the universe that one can hide from the wrath of Thanos. Thanks to the Avengers, however, Loki fails to conquer Earth, and the Tesseract is taken to Asgard along with the captured Loki by Thor, while the Mind Stone, still hidden within the scepter, remains on Earth. The other then reports to Thanos that the humans were not as weak as they were promised, and that to challenge them is to court death, which is a reference to the version of Thanos from the comic books, a much different version of the character, and one who believed that death was a woman he could make love him if he killed enough people. For the time being then, Thanos leaves the space and Mind Stones where they are, and after receiving a lead on the whereabouts of the Power Stone, he sends both Nebula and Gamora after it to the cloud tombs of Pravius. But it's actually not there, and it ends up being a trap, one Nebula falls prey to, and by order of Thanos himself, Gamora is forbidden from helping her sister. And so Nebula is forced to cut off her own arms to escape, later replacing them with even more cybernetics, and further causing her to loathe and want to kill both her father and sister. Next, Thanos commands Gamora to learn the location of the Soul Stone, but Gamora fails, or at least so she says. But the wise and perceptive Thanos knows otherwise. He knows she's lying to him and that she has discovered its location, and allows Gamora to believe she's fooled him. Partly because he no doubt wants her to eventually decide to tell him the truth on her own, to eventually get over this hatred she has for him once she comes to realize he's only doing what he must. He's only collecting the stones to save life in the universe. And partly he doesn't expose her lie because he likely can't bring himself to punish her, to punish his favorite and beloved daughter for lying to him. And soon after this, Thanos makes a deal with Ronan the Accuser of the Kree to bring to him a mysterious orb which, unbeknownst to Ronan, contains the Power Stone, and in exchange for retrieving it, Thanos will bring death to the people of Xandar. But things go awry when Star-Lord gets to the orb first, and Gamora, finally fed up with Thanos and wanting to be free of him, and despite knowing he will likely hunt her relentlessly, makes her move and initially tries to get the orb to sell it, until she learns what it contains and decides it's best kept on Xandar, and must convince her fellow soon-to-be teammates, the Guardians of the Galaxy, to help her get it from Ronan and far, far away from Thanos. But she's not the only one who learns what it is, for Ronan also discovers its true identity and decides to keep it and use the Power Stone to destroy Xandar himself. And to interject for a moment, what feels a little off about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy is how many people actually betray Thanos in it, those being Ronan and his two daughters Nebula and Gamora. I mean, yes, they all do have their own reasons for doing it, and it works for the story, and the movie handles it well enough. But other than his ever so brief appearance in that first Avengers movie, this is the only time we get to see Thanos before Infinity War, and everyone seems less than afraid to betray him, and to get on his bad side, if you will. Nevertheless, the betrayals in that movie likely spur Thanos to hasten his plans and pursuit of the stones, and encourage him to do it himself, as he says in the post-credit scene of Avengers Age of Ultron. And it's interesting to note that Thanos blames Ronan for the betrayal of Gamora, seemingly unable or unwilling to believe his favorite daughter would actually betray him of her own accord or desire. His love for her is his only true weakness, but one he will soon overcome. Which of course brings us to Infinity War, where after retrieving the Power Stone from Xandar off-screen, decimating the planet with his superior army, Thanos enters his own endgame and tracks down the Space Stone, which is still within the Tesseract and is in the possession of Loki aboard the Statesman, which harbors the Asgardians that have survived Ragnarok. And fresh off the heels of that disaster, Thor orders Valkyrie to get as many of their people to safety as she can, as the ship is attacked and boarded by Thanos. And after easily defeating the remaining Asgardians, Thanos begins to torture Thor until Loki will turn over the Tesseract to him. But unknown to Thanos, they have a Hulk. And it is here, in the opening scene of this movie, that we begin to understand and fear the brute strength of Thanos, as he quickly and efficiently defeats the strongest Avenger. Dismantling the mightiest of Earth's heroes is little more than a bit of fun for Thanos, before he finally retrieves the Tesseract, and sees through Loki's attempted deception, and kills him. And Thanos does all of this right in front of Thor, before he then leaves the God of Thunder to die alone and utterly beaten and broken in the cold emptiness of space. Victorious and now in possession of 2 stones, Thanos then heads off to the place known as Nowhere to take the Reality Stone from the Collector. And it is here that Thanos will lie in wait for Gamora, knowing she will likely come to try and stop him from collecting the stones. And he does this because he must know how she feels about him. He must know if she loves him and if she will someday sit upon his throne, taking his place. And so he creates an elaborate illusion, one where ultimately Gamora stabs and kills what she thinks is Thanos. And afterwards, she weeps. She weeps for the Mad Titan, and in those tears Thanos gains resolve and relief. The one person in the galaxy he truly cares about sheds tears at his death. Whatever she has or will say about him, whatever claims of hatred she has made, are not entirely true. A part of her does care, and he can rest assured one day she will, his favorite daughter, sit upon the throne he has made for her. Thanos then reveals it was just an illusion, and that he already has the Reality Stone, and he then offers Gamora a chance to willingly come with him, but she refuses, which genuinely wounds the Mad Titan. But in those aforementioned tears, Thanos has his proof that he needs, that she does care, that she will come around one day, perhaps after she sees all the good his plan will one day bring about. He then flees with Gamora, leaving Star-Lord and the other Guardians alive, presumably out of respect for Peter Quill, who actually pulled the trigger to kill Gamora as she requested of him, though Thanos turned the blast into just harmless bubbles. Once back on his ship, Thanos and Gamora then have an interesting conversation, one where we truly begin to understand that Thanos sees himself as the good guy, as the savior, that he takes no enjoyment in what he does, that he doesn't see it as murder, but rather simply mathematics, that it all must be done for the sake of balance. He's again doing what others simply will not for the good of all. And he even brings up that the worlds where he has wiped out half the population, such as Gamora's homeworld, are now thriving. And from this point on, we will be shown just how much conviction Thanos has. We will be shown that he will let nothing stand between him and accomplishing what he feels he must do, as he first tortures Nebula to get Gamora to tell him the location of the Soul Stone, which she does. And then when he takes her to Vormir, where the stone is, and Thanos is told by the Stonekeeper that the stone demands a sacrifice, that he must trade a soul for a soul, and that soul must be that which he loves above all else. And when Thanos begins to shed tears, Gamora mocks him, thinking they are tears of anger and frustration, because he could love nothing, no one. But the tears are instead for her, for what must be done, what must be given to accomplish what he alone was meant to do. So he drags her to the edge of the cliff, telling her he cannot ignore his destiny to save so many lives, even if it costs him the only one out of all of those lives that he actually cares about. And so he throws her from the cliff and mourns her. But again, not even the only thing in the universe he actually cares about can keep him from his task of saving that universe, which ironically will now be devoid of the only thing he cares about at all. A sad fate for a tragic, albeit very mad, character. And now, for the sake of keeping this relatively short, I'll just say that the rest of this movie is about Thanos encountering and defeating each and every one of the Avengers. And there are, of course, some great moments to be had, like learning about how much it pains Thanos to have sacrificed Gamora, that it genuinely causes him great agony that can be felt by Mantis, that he seems to know of and respect Tony Stark, that he thinks they're not all that different, and that he hopes that what's left of humanity will remember him. And then there's one of my favorite moments, that being when Thanos is momentarily impressed by the strength and resolve of Captain America, before he casually flings aside the iconic leader of the Avengers as if he was nothing at all. He then easily dispatches the others that stand in his way, but not soon enough to stop Wanda from destroying the Mind Stone. But instead of anger, Thanos seems to understand her actions. He seems to understand that she was only doing what she must, even if it meant giving up that which she loved. And so he uses the Time Stone to turn back the clock, before then ripping the Mind Stone right from Vision's forehead and claiming the 6th and final stone. And that's of course when Thor shows up and buries his new axe Stormbreaker right into his chest, and not his head, which would have ended the threat of the Mad Titan forever. And for this, Thanos mocks him for seeking vengeance instead of just doing what should have been done. And he then snaps his fingers and finally accomplishes that which he set out to do, bringing balance to the universe. And now, he's ready to rest. But before he can do that, he finds himself within the Soul Stone and sees a young Gamora who asks him, "What did it cost you?" To which he replies, "Everything," before reawakening in Wakanda to find the gauntlet scorched. And after a spiteful glare at his enemies, Thanos activates the Space Stone and escapes. And soon after, we find him on a peaceful world, sitting by a hut, overlooking a sunrise with a smile upon his face. But is he truly content? And even if he is, we know the Avengers will come for him. They will make things right, whatever it takes. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. And if you enjoyed this video and you haven't seen them already, I have ones just like it for the original 6 Avengers that I'll leave a link to in the description below. And by all means, leave a comment and let's talk some Marvel. And until next time, thanks for watching.